Happy Monday, everyone. What's going on? Welcome to your WWE Raw review for Cinco de Mayo 2025. What did you guys think of tonight's show? I enjoyed it. I thought tonight's Raw was pretty solid, so I wanted to come up here and at least do a review. We saw the return of CM Punk tonight, and the main event was a championship match. Jey Uso actually defending against Seth Rollins, which was a little bit surprising that we got this match announced for tonight. Some fans were even thinking we might even see a title change. I personally did not. I felt like we were going to see what I've been talking about for the past couple of weeks ever since WrestleMania, and that is Rollins is absolutely probably going to be the guy to take the championship off of Jey Uso. The problem is they're not going to do that right after WrestleMania. So the fact that they booked this match now, got a title match out of the way, we knew they were going to do a sketchy finish with a lot of interference and whatnot. So I figured Jey would survive tonight with the championship. He would then go on to face Logan Paul at Backlash or Saturday night's main event or Money in the Bank or wherever. And Rollins would then be preoccupied with Sami Zayn, the returning CM Punk, and that would buy a little bit of time before we revisit Seth Rollins and Jey Uso, maybe around SummerSlam time. And that's kind of what we got here tonight with some of that interference. Now, it is weird how it feels like they've changed from Punk and Roman kind of on the same side to Punk and Sami Zayn. So I'm wondering if there's going to be some tag match. I don't know if there's enough time to announce one for Saturday. It doesn't sound like Rollins or Uso is going to have a match at Backlash at this point, unless they throw together a tag. Rollins and Breakker against Punk and Sami. And then Jey is just left off completely, and he might go have his title match at Saturday night's main event instead. Not really sure. Either way, it was pretty obvious right from the word go tonight that there wasn't going to be a title change. There has to be some sort of shenanigans. And that's what I said. If WWE doesn't have plans for Rollins to win that championship until around SummerSlam, they're going to have to kill some time. And since Rollins won the main event at WrestleMania on night one, you would think his character, the first thing he's going to want to do is challenge for the championship. So it was basically their way of getting that out of the way. Seth didn't have to lose. He stayed protected. He didn't lose. Jey didn't lose. So they can obviously revisit this probably at SummerSlam. And I think it would be really fun if Braun Breaker won the Money in the Bank. And then Rollins gets the title shot at SummerSlam. Already tonight on Raw, we did see backstage Paul Heyman having to, explain things to Braun Breaker. And we said last week, for a lot of the fans that are thinking this is going to be some long-term bloodline type of segment, you had fans yelling at people online last week saying this is going to go on forever. They're going to be together for years. I don't know what these young kids are smoking today, but I don't want any. There's absolutely no way this is going to be a multiple year deal. Rollins Breakker is not going to be able to play second fiddle to Seth Rollins for that long. They've got months at best. And I'm starting to think now, right off the bat, as Heyman has to kind of explain things to Breakker a little bit, how are they going to make it to WrestleMania 42? This might all implode way before that, if tonight is to be believed. But overall, I thought it was a good show. It's kind of weird how, a lot of times throughout the years, one of the two shows is pretty good and the other one isn't. They're very rarely good at the same time. And SmackDown has been an absolute fucking bore. And I'm really excited to get back to those 2-hour shows where Raw has been pretty solid. But then just a year or two ago, Raw was the weak show and SmackDown had all the cinematic bloodline stuff. They were the place to be. It would be nice to get these two shows hitting at the same time, but Raw was a relatively easy watch tonight. I found it fairly enjoyable, where Friday night SmackDown was a goddamn chore. So it's the WrestleMania, decline. It's the lull after WrestleMania. That's to be expected, but WWE pulled out a good Raw tonight, so why couldn't SmackDown do the same? Probably because it's too long. So what we're going to do tonight is just kind of review Raw. We'll talk about Backlash as well. I'm going to wait until later on in the week till we get the final full card. We did get one additional match announced, and the card might be set now. I just need to hold out and wait and see if there's going to be anything added last minute, and then I'm probably going to hit you guys with a recorded upload this week for Backlash predictions instead of trying to squeeze in a live stream. That might change, but as it stands right now, I'm probably going to hit you with a video on Thursday, just doing a quick prediction for Backlash. And then we will be here this coming Saturday to watch Backlash, and that link is already up on the channel for Saturday. We're going to do a watch along and review, so make sure you hang on to that. In addition to the Raw review tonight, we are going to talk about this Alberto Del Rio WWE situation. A lot of conflicting reports. A lot of fans seem to be confused. And I don't think really at the end of the day, anybody really knows what's going on here. But we're going to do our best to detail what we know about so far and what that means. But I think a lot of fans today were flying off the rails when they see the headline, WWE signs Alberto Del Rio. That's not really the case. So I think everybody just needs to chill out for a minute. We'll talk about it. We'll try to break it down as best we can. And I think soon we will, learn the real details of what's going on here. But I was really surprised at the outrage today because the very first thing I thought about when WWE acquired AAA is what that means for Alberto Del Rio or Alberto Del Fuckface or Alberto El Patron, whatever the fuck he's called. And so whatever that piece of shit does, he's a big part of AAA. So in my mind, when that happened, I'm like, well, Alberto's in AAA. I expect him to stay in AAA. And WWE just purchased AAA. So I guess technically that means Alberto Del Rio works for WWE. And then when we got this news today, fans acted like it was the most shocking thing they've ever read. Well, what did you think was going to happen? He's like the mega champion down there. They're building the whole damn promotion around him. So if WWE bought AAA, I doubt they're going to just fire Del Rio or Del Patron or El Patron. But I also don't think they're necessarily going to be bringing him back into the company either. I think if they brought him out on the main roster and had him attack John Cena or something, then we might have a reason to be really fucking mad and angry. But what we kind of learned, or what a lot of fans thought they learned today about Del Rio, is kind of what we already kind of knew. So why are we pissed? We knew this was going to happen. So anyway, we're going to break that down, and I'm going to do my best to try to make heads or tails of that situation. And we'll talk about Raw and Backlash as well. Also, we have a little bit of late breaking news on Duke the Dumpster Droese, so we're going to talk about that as well. Probably just a quick stream tonight. I've got some dinner and movie plans with Elizabeth later, so we'll hang out for an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer, depending on what the audience is like and depending on what you guys are having to say in the chat. But one thing I would like from you guys is to let me know what you thought of the show with your grades, A, B, or C, or D, or 1 through 10, whatever you thought of Raw tonight. Give me a general idea of how you thought the show was. I personally thought it was good and watchable, and I liked it for the most part. Let's see who is here. If we got anybody in the chat yet. We got Zane G in the house. What's up? Max Pokebra is here. We got Jay Lambo, Tatanani, Rodrigo, Ryan Dempsey, Red Raven Rucker. Max, yeah, 1,000 likes. I doubt that. David Brown, Kevin Plays, Sonic Plays, Denny Downbad. We've got Barry MK in here, Brian Powers, Stephen Harris, Joe M, Justin Kong Lang, and Isaac, and the new one, and David, did I get you? I think I did. But anyway, all y'all who are here so far, thank you for being here on this Monday night. And we're going to get into this Monday Night Raw. I just realized now that I should have changed the title a little bit here. Let me just do a quick little edit before we jump in here. I'm just going to put in the title here, CM Punk Returns, just to catch folks' eye. There we go. Yeah, I didn't really bother updating my thumbnail. I just put the beginning of Jay and Seth on there. I thought that would work fine. And there we go. Now I got it kind of where I want it to be. But anyway, before we get into Monday Night Raw tonight, let's talk about this situation today regarding Alberto El Patron. So there was not a lot of news today. I got up like usual and I went to go do my blood procedure, and I'm at the doctor's office there reading through social media and reading through the Twitters, and I'm seeing all this muss and fuss about Alberto Del Rio being signed by WWE. We don't really know if that's the case. Here's how it all kind of started. I guess Ernesto Ocampo, he was the one who posted all of the AAA wrestlers whose contracts have been picked up by WWE, I guess. And they were names that included Alberto Del Rio, Hio de Dr. Wagner, Vikingo, La Parca, La Hedra, Lady Flammer, Lady Maravilla, and Nino Hamburguesa. Yes, I would definitely pick him up. So that was one of the first things to come out, that those contracts, I guess, were, for better term, absorbed by WWE. But then Lucha Blog had some information that kind of retorted this a little bit, and it got some of the fans divided. But again, I think both could be right here. And here's what Lucha Blog had to say. Many fans, especially in the US, are assuming that by buying AAA, WWE is also acquiring the contracts. But aside from the fact that the sale hasn't been finalized, those contracts are of no use to WWE, as WWE's contracts are legally distinct and include multiple provisions and clauses such as exclusivity, intellectual property rights, and termination conditions that AAA's do not address or enforce. That's why new contracts are replacing the existing ones. And that's what a couple of people said to me on social media today. They're like, Greg, it's, they're, I forgot what the word they were using. They were inherited deals. I'm like, no, they're not inherited deals. WWE is going to absolutely want to rewrite these contracts. Absolutely. So they might say, yes, you're going to stay with us, but we're rewriting your contract and you're going to have a whole different bunch of forms to sign. It's not going to be just the AAA contract that you signed is now WWE's contract. It all has to be rewritten. And that, to me, as a fan, was obvious when the announcement was made. When they were all there at WrestleMania in the pre-show and Triple H had everybody behind him. I knew then that anybody who's going to stick around there are going to have WWE written contracts. They're probably all going to have to be rewritten because of some of those things that Lucha Blog pointed out. He went on to say, to my knowledge, WWE did not give Alberto a contract. AAA signed Alberto to a contract when they decided to build a promotion around him for the last year. And WWE will assume that contract when they take over the company. I don't think decisions have been made past that. So exactly, they're going to assume a lot of these contracts, but they're still going to have to be rewritten now that there's new ownership. Ernesto knows a lot I don't know, but there are people on that list I was previously specifically told did not have a contract, and there are people who I'm fairly certain are signed who are not on that list. It's also a deal that's 3 weeks old, a lot still to be figured out. Corey Hayes from bodyslam.net said that he is not signed and that the deal is not even going to be complete and finalized until Q3. So all of these AAA contracts that WWE intends on absorbing are going to have to be rewritten when the deal is finalized in the third quarter. So nothing is official now. Yes, technically, you could view Alberto Del Rio as a WWE contracted star, but not really. It's just one of those things where nobody really knows. And this goes a lot deeper. Like you've got some division here, people taking sides between Ernesto and Lucha Blog, but neither of these two have a problem with each other. It seems like there's conflicting information, and sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot. All it took is for one person to put out WWE signs Alberto, and that's all the fans needed to flip their shit, and where it was like, well, didn't we have this on our minds when this announcement was first made? We knew Alberto was there. He wasn't standing behind everybody, thankfully, at the WrestleMania thing. But if he's a big part of that promotion, in my mind, as long as WWE doesn't bring him back to the main roster, he's got a lot of crap attached to him. He's been horrible relationships. He was a terrible boyfriend to Paige or Saraya. He's got kidnapping charges on him. He's had some, I think legally he might have everything cleared up, but he is an absolute piece of shit. And I don't want him around. I don't want him on American television, but if he's in AAA, what the fuck do I care? That's their business. So I don't really have an issue with that. And if Alberto was already a big part of AAA, that's stuff that we were talking about during WrestleMania. What's going to happen with him? I guess he's going to be technically working back in WWE. Everybody kind of knew this. So once you just see that headline, you see the words written out in black and white, WWE signs Alberto, that was all it took for social media to lose its mind. And I dislike Alberto Del Fuckface as much as the next guy. The hell with him. I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want to see his stupid fucking face ever. I completely agree with the fans that have strong feelings towards him, negative feelings towards him, or would be outraged at the idea of him coming back to the WWE. I'm with you on that. But why don't we make sure first? Why don't you wait until he shows up on Raw before you lose your mind? I don't think that's the case. I think he's just going to be down there working in AAA, and since WWE has acquired AAA, once the deal is finalized, he's technically going to have a WWE contract, but it's going to be used for AAA. So, yes, there might be some crossover, and if there is, I'm hoping that it's a lot of other talents other than Del Rio. And I do understand the fact that maybe it's a little bit too close for comfort. Hey, I get it. I never thought Del Rio would even sniff the WWE again. So technically, the fact that he's going to be working for them again, is an uncomfortable notion. I agree with the fans on that, but I'm not sitting here thinking that he's going to be main eventing WrestleMania 42. Fans were acting today like this is the biggest controversy that they've ever heard of. You know, like this is a controversy that we knew was coming. We knew Alberto worked there, and we were wondering how that's going to work, and he's probably going to stay there. And since WWE owns AAA, they're probably going to be the ones paying him. So that's not anything that's super frustrating or angering to me, you know, but if Alberto showed up and he's all of a sudden back on WWE TV again, then maybe we can have this discussion again. But much like the releases on Friday, you know, it felt like a lot of fans were acting as if this is the first time they had ever experienced releases. This is the worst in the company's history. Fuck them. TKO is evil. I'm like, it doesn't matter if TKO, Vince McMahon, or fucking El Pollo Loco owned the WWE. We would see these releases happen every year. It's a routine annual occurrence. Do releases suck? Yes. Do you feel bad for the affected talent? Of course. Do you wish them the best? Who wouldn't? But the outrage was a little bit self-centered, and I felt people were trying really hard to make it about them and how angry they can be, and they can be angrier than the other person so they can get the attention. Just make it about themselves, right? It's attention, attention, attention. And I'm like, this is just something we do this every fucking year. Like what's, you know, yeah, sometimes some releases are kind of like, I can't believe they released that guy. What the hell is the matter with them? And then you move on. You don't spend 3 days on it. So just still today, in addition to the Alberto Del Rio stuff, it's just all about these releases. Oh, they're shitting on the women, and TKO hates women and everything. I'm like, why does everything with fans have to be turned up to 11? Why are there no rational thoughts? Why is critical thinking so wrong in the wrestling community? It's taboo to actually think something through before you freak out. Can't do that in the IWC. It's freak out first, ask questions later. And I think that we should learn about what's going on before we freak out on WWE for hiring back Alberto Del Rio. Why don't we know the facts? You know, instead of just leaping right into outrage, let's find out what this means. And so far, the way it's all been detailed today, it feels like exactly what we thought was going to happen. He works there. WWE bought the company. He's probably going to continue to work there, which means and TKO is going to be signing his checks. I can live with that. I don't want him on my TV. I don't want him on American television, you know, showing up here and getting opportunities because he's a piece of shit, you know, but I don't really have a lot of other investment in what he does other than that. If he works for AAA and AAA wants him there, that's their business, honestly. I'll let the fans of that promotion, and it's not like I'm not a fan of that promotion. It's just I'm not a diehard fan. I'm not watching it every week. You know, the fans are in the arena and putting the time in and lifelong fans of that promotion. I'll let them decide if Alberto is welcome there or not. I just don't want him on Raw or SmackDown or NXT or any pay-per-views or PLEs, nothing like that. And it doesn't sound like, by what we learned today, any of that is going to be happening. So I feel like we should reserve. There may be a reason when this is all said and done, there may actually be a real reason to be kind of pissed off, but nothing yet by what we learned today. So I think fans were just really itching to kind of be outraged. And I think it's a little bit early for that. But Del Rio working in AAA is something that I always thought was going to be the case. You know, I never thought it wasn't going to be the case. So when this news hit today, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of what I figured. So why are we pissed again? I don't know. Here's something that should actually piss you off. Former WWE wrestler in the 90s, Duke the Dumpster Droese, who actually holds a victory over Triple H on pay-per-view. I believe it was the Royal Rumble 1996. There was like a match on the free-for-all, and I think the winner got to be number 30. And it was Triple H and Duke Droese, and Triple H lost. And I think he had to be number 1, right? Did the winner have to be 1 and the loser had to be 30, or winner had to be 30, loser had to be 1, something like that. But Droese got to be the 30th pick, and he does own a victory over Triple H. It's pretty much his best moment. He was, kind of a glorified jobber, was never going to win any championships. And he was kind of a joke of a gimmick, although he was kind of talented, though. Like, there was I remember in like 96, like on the Action Zone, maybe not 96, whenever he was around, like the Action Zone, they were running a series of little backstage videos of him doing impressions of all the WWE wrestlers. He did Bret, he did Undertaker, and he did Diesel and Shawn and everybody. And it was actually kind of good, I thought. But he never really amounted to anything in the ring. But a lot of fans still to this day, even though he 2 years max had to have been his run, right? Help me out on that. I don't even think it was 2 years. But 2 years was probably the longest he was there, I think. And he still really left a mark. Everybody, whenever they talk about those old days of WWE and their stupid gimmicks, Duke the Dumpster Drosy's name is one of the first names you hear. Well, he got busted this week as he attempted to, this is courtesy of Fightful, where he has been arrested for attempting to purchase child sexual assault material, child pornography, from the dark web. His transaction was flagged and terminated, and Drosy peacefully submitted himself to the Warren County Sheriff's Department. He was booked on the charges and was immediately released upon making bond. So he's been indicted on 1 count of attempted aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor. So that's kind of interesting. And I forgot where the state, why didn't I write down what state this was in? What the hell's wrong with me? I don't know where Warren County is. It is in Tennessee. So this happened in Tennessee. I'm reading up. There's a press release on this here too. Upon review of the evidence secured by Special Agent Starr, I made the decision to charge Michael Drosy with attempted aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor. Sexual exploitation of a minor is the name of Tennessee's law prohibiting child sexual assault material in all its forms. This charge became aggravated because Mr. Drosy intended to purchase the child material. Purchasing material is an aggravated crime because the money used to purchase the material is what continues to make sexual assault material profitable for criminal enterprises, produce it and sell it across the world. However, because Mr. Drosy was unsuccessful in securing the material he intended to purchase, the charge becomes a criminal attempt. Thus, the decision was made for the charges. His bail was in the amount of $10,000. After becoming aware of the indictment returned against him, Drosy peacefully submitted. So looks like he got busted there, and the fact that the bond was so low and he was able to get out, this is Tennessee, I don't know what the laws are, but something like this I would think under normal circumstances would land you jail time. You know? I mean, it's not like Jared from Subway where he had a whole house full of this stuff. You know, he's attempting to purchase here, but to me that's bad enough. You know, so I don't know what the law is going to be here for him. If it's going to be a fine, he might have to be registered as a sex offender or something like that. But it's pretty fucking disgusting, and I wish nothing but the worst for Mike Duke the Dumpster Drosy for being a disgusting, perverted piece of shit. So anyway, that was some interesting news to read about 2 hours ago, and the news was everywhere. But I pulled the information off of Fightful's website there. So those were kind of the two little news tidbits I wanted to get into here tonight before we jumped into Monday Night Raw. And like I said, Monday Night Raw was a pretty damn good show tonight. I enjoyed it. Guys are giving it C's in there. All right, that's not too bad. Guess I can live with a C. Okay, thank you, Nate Dogg. Triple H was number one. That's the way I thought it was. I feel like the loser had to be 1, winner had to be 30. So that's the biggest win of his career. So Triple H in 1996, listen to this. Triple H in 1996 and the month before 1995, before the curtain call even happened. You know how Triple H spins the narrative? When I got the curtain call, I had to eat plates and plates of shit and like it. He was eating plates and plates of shit before the curtain call happened. After the curtain call happened, he lost the King of the Ring, but then he won the IC title like a couple months later. So he was barely punished. It felt like, but he kind of acts like matches like this were his punishments, but he was treated way worse before the curtain call than he was after. In December of 95, he lost the hog pen match to Henry O. Godwin. Got beat up in there, rolling around in pig slop and pig shit with a huge gash on his back. Then he goes into the Royal Rumble to lose. First it's Henry O. Godwin he loses to. Then he loses to Duke the Dumpster Drosy at the Royal Rumble. Then he goes into WrestleMania to get squashed by the Ultimate Warrior. So the fact that they were going to give him the King of the Ring, I'm like, why? He's been punked out every damn week on TV. So they weren't even building to that. So Triple H really had a rough go of it there between December of 95 and WrestleMania. Lost to some horrific opponents. But anyway, Duke Drosy, that's pretty disgusting, man. Anyway, let's get into tonight's Monday Night Raw. Like I said, I thought tonight's show was relatively good, had some entertaining moments, and it was a much easier watch for me anyway than SmackDown was on Friday. Show opened up with Jey Uso making his way down through the crowd. This is a very long entrance. I had time to go to the bathroom, change out my laundry, get something to drink, sit back down, and he's still doing the thing, and then they start the music again. So by the time all that happens, a lot of time has passed. And Jey is then interrupted. This was surprising to me. This was really surprising because I thought based on what they set up last week, the only person that's going to interrupt Jey here is going to be Logan Paul. But it was Paul Heyman, which surprised me. So Paul Heyman comes out and he cuts this just very passionate promo. First of all, he's got 7.5 pounds of spray tan on his skin, and he's talking about Jey, and he's talking to Jey about CM Punk and Roman Reigns and how they did him wrong, and going on and on. And as he's talking, it looks like an artery is going to burst through his neck. He's just red face. His eyes are just fire red. He's already got that tan going. And I'm like, Paul, please don't die. Please don't have a full-blown brainerism right here in the ring, okay? I really thought Heyman's health was in danger based on the intensity, of his promo. And he's screaming at Jey, and I'm thinking the same thing Jey is. I'm like, what the fuck does any of this have to do with Jey Uso? And that's what Jey Uso says. Jey goes, first of all, he asks Paul Heyman if he's okay. Or he goes, are you okay? Like, what does this have to do with me? And then Heyman says that Seth Rollins, needs to be champion. He's the greatest star in the world, and he's got to be champion, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I expected. I expected Rollins to target the World Heavyweight Championship right away, but I thought things were going to be standing in his way of that. First, I thought it was going to be a tag team match at Backlash, Punk and Roman versus Breakker and Seth. And then last week, it looked like Sami Zayn with all that stuff that happened with Sami Zayn, that it was going to be Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn at Backlash. Now, based on tonight, it either looks like there's going to be no Backlash match at all, or it is going to be a tag with Rollins and Breakker against Sami and Punk. And I don't know where that leaves Jey Uso. I guess he's just not going to have a match at Backlash. But I kind of expected after WrestleMania that Rollins is going to have to his character is going to want the championship, but I think some things are going to have to be standing in his way to prolong when he beats Jey for the title. But maybe WWE felt like they had to get this going. They had to kick off this story now with Seth targeting the championship. So they're going to do a match, right away just to get that done and then revisit it. And it feels like that's what they did. So Heyman goes on to say that Seth needs to be champion and Seth will beat Jey Uso for the title, because if he won the main event at WrestleMania, that's going to entitle him to a title shot and would likely make him the number one contender anyway. So Jey Uso, you can pick your own execution date. I will let you choose. That's the favor I will give you, he said. I will let you choose when you face Seth Rollins and when Seth Rollins beats you. And Jey Uso says, why don't we just do it tonight? And so it looks like we're going to be getting a championship match tonight, and they announced it officially. Michael Cole right after that said it is official. Jey Uso will be defending in his first title defense since winning it at WrestleMania, the World Heavyweight title against Seth Rollins in the main event. And then we cut backstage, and we've got Heyman back there with Rollins and with Breakker, and Rollins was saying something to the effect of, like, I told you so. I think he's told Heyman to go out there and kind of goad Jey Uso into the match and it'll work. And, Heyman's just all about Seth. Yes, yes, yes. And Seth goes, yeah, I told you so. And then he leaves or something. And then Breakker is kind of standing there a little bit confused. And he's kind of mumbles like Rollins versus Uso for the championship. And then Heyman says, like, do you see what happened here? And he just really starts talking Seth up, and he's trying to explain or sell this to Breakker, and he kind of gets Breakker to understand. But you could tell just that little subtleties there of Breakker being like, well, where's my title shot? Which I thought would be a ways off. I thought that would be the story they would tell. Breakker would be second fiddle to Seth, but then slowly realize he's every bit as good, if not better, than Rollins. So Rollins will probably win the title. He'll act like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's going to annoy Breakker. And finally, Breakker just cuts him in half and wins the title, at WrestleMania 42 or something like that. It felt like that's where this is going to take us. So the fact that they are already showing just like little subtle signs of Breakker not being able to take this for very long. He's a very intense guy, a lot of energy, doesn't have a lot of time to think before he acts. He's very unpredictable in that way. And if you do make him mad, you want to be somewhere else. So I just don't know how someone of Breakker's intensity can fit in a faction like this for very long. Last week you had people arguing on social media saying, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing. This is going to be a 2 years minimum. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? It's like, well, the Judgment Day did it and Bloodline did it. Well, that doesn't mean this is, what is that? That doesn't have nothing to do with it. The Judgment Day would have ended a lot longer if it wasn't as good as it was. It turned out to be pretty good. Same thing with the Bloodline. My God, they ran with that for as long as they could. That doesn't mean that's just their policy now. And any faction that they put together is going to be 2 years minimum. That's stupid. You got to see how it goes. If it's not working, you got to abandon it. If it's working really well, then you extend it. But you don't just decide this. Right off the bat, if we've seen anything from WWE creatively recently, is they do not have long-term plans set in place at all, no matter what they want to try to tell you, because we saw that just in the last 2 WrestleManias, and the builds leading up to that, and them just flying by the seat of their pants and doing this, changing their minds, pivoting, all that stuff. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. So I feel like already Breakker is going to start maybe having some jealousy issues with Rollins, eventually, and that's going to really intensify when Rollins inevitably wins the championship from Jey Uso. So we've got ourselves a championship main event on Raw. I think that's pretty awesome. First match of the night, the recently returning JD McDonough. He took on Penta. We had everybody out there, Carlitos out there, and Chad Gable showed up, tried to interfere, grab a hold of Penta's leg. He disposed of Gable and wound up hitting a Mexican destroyer on JD for the win. So I think Balor was out there too. Everybody was out there, and it just did not work out. And Penta got the win over JD. And then later on, we would get the announcement that at Backlash, it's going to be Dominic Mysterio defending the IC title against Penta. I thought it was going to be AJ Styles, based on what we saw AJ talking to Pierce or Aldis, I guess, about last week. And then later on in the night, backstage after this match, Judgment Day is there, and that was kind of when we got the match announced, and JD's, of course, mad about the way the match went and how he lost, and that's when AJ Styles shows up, and something happened here. I don't know what. AJ got tripped up when he was trying to say Intercontinental title, and he said, how about this, man? How about this? I want to face the winner of you and Penta for the inter, and they're all just looking at him like, come on, spit it out, old man. It was a cute moment. It wasn't a botch that I would, criticize AJ for. It was awesome. We all botch. Fuck, I botch every damn podcast. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. I'm mumbling all the time. So it was kind of funny watching AJ kind of trip up, not even being able to get the words Intercontinental out. I chuckled at, and I guess he'll be getting the winner of Dom and Penta. So I think Dom needs to retain at Backlash somehow. I believe he will, especially since Penta got the win tonight. The same reason Lyra Valkyria is going to lose on Saturday as well. So Dom will survive, I believe, and then it'll be AJ Styles up next for the IC title. And that could be a Saturday night's main event match, which is coming up on the 24th, or it could just be on Raw. Might just wind up being on Raw. After that, we had a Becky Lynch promo. So this was Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria's final chance for to build their match for Saturday, as they're going to have their confrontation here on the go home. Becky, of course, explains herself again, goes on, and we know at some point we're going to see Bayley show up. I feel like it's going to happen. It's got to happen after Backlash, because I think Becky's going to win. But Lyra Valkyria then comes out. They exchange some words. Eventually, a fight breaks out. They start brawling. They have to be pulled apart. I think they even get back. I think Lyra gets back in there, and they start fighting some more. So it was this big pull-apart thing. In the end, Lyra puts down Becky and takes her out and stands over her body, holding the championship up on the go-home show. So let's just think about that. Lyra Valkyria, the current Women's Intercontinental Champion, If what we've seen on SmackDown is any indication, these undercard championships are going to change hands pretty frequently. Becky Lynch, one of the greatest of all time, just returned a month ago. Now she's got a championship match on a pay-per-view. Which way do you think this is going to go? So, my God, can they tell you any harder that Becky is going to be the new Intercontinental Champion? Obviously, that's got to be the way it's going to go. I think Becky's going to beat her unless Bayley comes back and helps Lyra retain. I suppose that could happen. But I feel like Becky should win, and then maybe Bayley should take it from her, or maybe Bayley winds up turning heel. Maybe there's some swerve we're not seeing or we don't know about. But it feels like based on the way that segment went, you know, any time on the go-home show that you're holding the championship, standing over the body of your opponent at the pay-per-view coming up in a couple days, you can kiss that championship goodbye. So I haven't done my predictions yet, but from where we sit, I'm picking Becky Lynch to win the IC title. I still would have put the belt on Natalya first. I think Natalya should have been the first Intercontinental Champion. Lyra should have beat Natalya for it, and then Becky beat Lyra for it. That's the order I would have gone in. But no, Triple H does not like to do smart things. My God, this was a great match. Io Sky, one-on-one with Roxanne Perez. Enjoyed this. Enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun. I was sad to see it end. It was so good. Io Sky maybe the finish wasn't as good as the match was, because she did win with, a couple of pinning sequences there. She ended up winning with a roll-up. But the match itself was excellent. I was surprised at the end that Roxanne did the show respect with Io and then actually left the ring. I'm like, is that really happening? That doesn't feel right. And then, of course, you could feel the crowd roaring. Julia comes in from behind and attacks Io. And then Roxanne reveals that it was all a ploy. She smiles and runs back in to beat down Io. And help me out, because is that how it ended, or did Ripley come out? I think I left the room and I didn't finish writing my notes down. I don't know how the end of that segment went. Did the segment end with Julia and Roxanne just beating down Io, or did Io get someone come out and make the save for her? I forgot. It feels like it would have been Ripley, but I don't recall seeing Ripley tonight. I might have been out of the room. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember what happened after that. That might have been the end of the segment. I just thought there might have been more to it than that, and that's where my notes end. And I do remember I was in and out of the room a lot during that time period, so I might have forgotten to backtrack and make sure I had that right. So let me know if I'm missing anything there. And then after that, it was time for Rusev's first match in the WWE oh, I'm sorry, I missed something. We got to go backwards. Back. Remember when I said they announced Dom and Penta at Backlash, and we talked about that? Prior to all of that happening, I forgot to mention another match that was set up backstage. So Grayson Waller and Austin Theory are backstage. They're there with Adam Pearce. Waller has got a match tonight, but they've been teasing for a long time, this split between these two that's been going on way, way too long. And Waller said something like, I don't want to be selfish by getting, Pearce, apparently he lobbied for a singles match, and he feels like that was kind of selfish of him. So he would like to give his singles match to his good friend, Austin Theory. And Pearce is like, is that really what you want to do? And Austin's like, yeah, I'm game. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for the match. Who's my opponent? And Waller's like, we'll just save that for a surprise. And Austin Theory then has to face a returning Sheamus. This match, much like Roxanne and Io, was also good. It was a banger. I thought it was going to be Sheamus just murdering him, but it turned out to be a somewhat competitive match. And Sheamus, after a white noise and a brogue kick, got the win. And it was a really solid match for a really solid performer in Sheamus. Really happy to see him back wearing some red. He looked weird wearing red. I don't know how often he's worn some red, but he looked like he was wearing like little red underwear with a WWE logo on it. Very, very sexy. So I was surprised that he didn't go with the Celtic green there. He was out wearing red tonight. So I almost skipped over that match. I apologize for that. Now we can talk about Rusev and Otis. First match back in WWE for Rusev, I think in 5 years, Michael Cole said. I didn't know it had been that long. And, of course, he's taken on Otis, so this is our first good look at Rusev back in the ring in the WWE. This was pretty good. Rusev seemed to have a spring in his step. in this match. I was kind of thinking it wasn't going to be good, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed Aleister Black and The Miz on Friday. I thought that match was very, very boring. But this one was a little bit better. Otis fought his ass off in the end, though. Accolade for the win. And there's a post-match beatdown. After Rusev wins, he beats down Tozawa. He puts the Accolade back on Otis. We got Natalya coming out there to try to console Maxine, who's screaming and freaking out. And I loved Maxine's jacket. She had like a Raw is War jacket. Looked great. Maxine's one of my favorite people. She's the type of person just puts a smile on your face whenever you see her. She is great. So poor Otis got beat down. Rusev annihilated whatever they're called. Alpha, I don't even know what they're called. Are they Alpha Academy? Whatever Otis and his crew is called, they got destroyed by Rusev. So I was kind of hoping that during the post-match beatdown that Rusev would be interrupted by someone. Someone would come out and make the save and maybe setting up, the first little program there. But nobody came out. Rusev just had the officials to deal with. And then it was time for a Pat McAfee and Gunther segment. So Pat was going to have a chance to say his piece to Gunther's face with Adam Pearce in the ring, kind of moderating this. So Gunther comes out, Pat's in the ring, and, Pat gives Gunther shit for, beating up a 60-year-old man just for having an opinion, and talked about him losing to Sammy, him losing to Jay, being complacent, and just really airing out his frustrations on what Gunther did to him last week. And then Gunther, that seemed like it had the same effect on Gunther that Gunther had on Jay. Like when Jay saw his brother choked out, he kind of just like changed. And with Gunther here, when Pat McAfee said all that to him, Gunther said, "Let me ask you something. Did you enjoy your daughter's birthday? She's 2, right?" And then he kind of thanks Pat McAfee for getting him in the mood. You talk about me being complacent, taking you lightly. I can promise you that you're going to have my 100% full undivided attention at Backlash. You're going to get all of me. You're going to get me at your best, at my best. And I'm really glad he said that, because we've been talking a lot about this match and how it could go, and how I'm assuming it's going to go is how WWE does everything. And it's probably going to be a competitive match where Gunther just barely wins. And I'm not going to like that. I would be fine with this match provided that it's a definitive dominant win for Gunther. It doesn't have to be a complete squash. I'm not talking Bundy and ST Jones at WrestleMania 2. Doesn't have to be that. But it has to be maybe more along the lines of Cena and Brock in 2014, because even though that match is considered a squash, Cena had a couple flares there, but Brock just neutralized them and shut all of them down. So, Gunther having a dominant win over Pat is the way I need to see this go now, based on Gunther telling Pat, "You're going to have my undivided attention. You got all of me. You keep thinking I'm not focused. I'm going to show you focus, son." So he better do that. Gunther better deliver, just to show that Gunther is back. So that's the kind of match I need to see. If it turned out to be competitive after Gunther, said what he said to Pat, that would really surprise me. Pat hasn't been in the ring very much, and he hasn't been in the ring in many years, and he's not even a wrestler to begin with. So how can this match really be that competitive? Gunther needs to beat him and beat him hard. This is a pay-per-view, so it's not, you can't do a 5-second match, but you definitely have to do something to reestablish Gunther and the dominance we've come to expect from him at Backlash. So that's what that promo told me. Unless they're going to do something where it would tell a story where Gunther's going to get beat here, and then he's going to have to go back to Germany to re-find himself or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea. Wait, where's he from? Rusev is from Bulgaria. So Gunther better win, and he better win hard. All right, main event time. Jey Uso defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Seth Rollins here in the main event. This was a fun match. Now, I was just waiting for it to end. How would this have ended? Would it end in a no contest, or would it end in a Seth Rollins win via disqualification when Punk arrived? I don't even know what the official word is on this match, but it was a good match, and the fans, were into it, and it was nice to hear a Jey Uso match where you have "This Is Awesome" chants. Granted, he's in there with Seth Rollins. Seth is fantastic, but I thought the two had a relatively decent match. Jey didn't seem as slow or kind of lethargic as he sometimes does. This was relatively good. We saw, I believe, Jey Uso kick out of the stomp and Seth Rollins kick out of the spear, right? The spear, Rollins kicked out of the stomp. Seth didn't really get all of it, so Jey was able to kick out. But you also had Braun Breaker out there with Paul Heyman. And so Sami Zayn was the first one to come out, and he came out there to kind of like neutralize Braun Breaker. And that allowed Jey Uso to get Seth in the ring and hit him with the frog splash that I thought was the finish, because I thought we were going to get back at Backlash Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins. So Sami coming out to help Jey win, since Seth has got some backup. He evens up the odds. Now Jey catches Seth, hits him with the frog splash. I thought he was going to get the pin, but Seth kicked out. And then Braun Breaker, Sami gets taken out. So after the splash kick out, Jey leaves the ring. He leaves the ring to go check on Sami, who has now been annihilated by Braun Breaker. And then Jey gets speared on the outside of the ring by Braun Breaker. And that's when I was like, oh shit, maybe we are going to see a title change. Breaker throws Jey back into the ring, stomp to Jey. And well, I'm like, what's going to happen? And then I'm like, somebody's going to have to interfere. There's no time. There's going to be a 3 count. And then CM Punk's music hit. Punk comes running out there with a chair, nails Braun Breaker, goes right after Seth Rollins, chases him off with the chair. The heels retreat. Jey Uso keeps the title. Seth Rollins was protected, not having to take a loss, and now everything is set up to where you can revisit Jey Uso and Seth Rollins in a little while. Jey Uso's got to have a little bit of a run here, and I'm thinking SummerSlam is the absolute latest it's going to go. He might even drop it before then, but I feel like SummerSlam will probably be the destination, and then Rollins, his issues with Punk, his issues with Sami, they're going to keep him busy. Probably, I guess, until Money in the Bank or beyond. And I would love to see, and I think they might do it, Braun Breaker winning Money in the Bank. If Braun Breaker is in Money in the Bank, here, that'll be the spoiler for you. Because I would not, if I'm WWE, I would not put Braun Breaker in the Money in the Bank unless he's going to win the Money in the Bank. Otherwise, I just leave him out. But if Breaker is in that Money in the Bank match, I could absolutely see him winning, because I also believe you're going to have one briefcase on Raw and one briefcase on SmackDown. And I really want Naomi to win the briefcase for the women. If she does, that means the briefcase will be on SmackDown, and it's got to be a Raw dude winning the briefcase. Well, who else on Raw would be the most intriguing in that scenario? Think of all the other names on Raw. Punk for one, actually. So I would love for Punk to win Money in the Bank, but he probably won't. So, if it's not a Punk or something, then I think Braun Breaker would make the most sense, because now you've got seeds of distrust sown into your faction. Paul Heyman, who's always stressed out no matter what, keeping his soldiers on the same page, he's immediately going to be met here with some high levels of stress with Breaker having that briefcase, and Heyman's going to have to be in his ear, go after Cena, go after Cena, go after Cena, and try to do his best to keep him away from Rollins. And then Rollins has got to be there at some point as the champion, looking at his stablemate there with the briefcase, and I think that could make some fun television in 2025. Now, I don't know where CM Punk is going to fit into this. I assume, it might be Punk and Rollins for the championship at some point. That might be WrestleMania 42. It might be Punk and Rollins for the title on night 2 at WrestleMania 42, and Punk wins. Maybe that's where it goes. But I feel like Breaker is the person that's going to come out of this stable, regardless of how long it lasts. He's going to come out as the real winner here. I think this is done to elevate him, even though I think he can elevate himself. I don't think Breaker's going to need too much trouble elevating himself. His name is stupid and drives me nuts. But other than that, this dude is the future. Only an idiot would screw him up. I mean, from what we understand, he's a pretty solid dude behind the scenes too. Doesn't drink or party or do drugs. He was like just a model player. Coaches loved coaching for him. He's the type of guy that showed up early to lift his weights and help break down the shit at the end, and first to arrive, last to leave type of mentality. Works unbelievably hard, sets goals, meets goals, that type of thing. He's the exact type of guy from a mental perspective you would want on top. And on top of that, he's charismatic. He can talk. I think he'd look good sitting on Jimmy Fallon one day, except for that stupid name. I think Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and any other talk show he goes on, they're going to be like, explain to us the stupid name you have. And then he's going to have to explain that he came up with it, and now he's going to look really dumb. So that name, I hate it. I hate the name. I hate the name. And the reason I hate the name is because Braun Breaker is the future. And he's going to have to come out of this whole thing probably as champion when it's all said and done. And he might be the one that beats Seth Rollins for the title. And I think, and I personally think if CM Punk is going to win a championship, it should be the WWE belt anyway. So I'm hoping that, Punk here getting back in bed with Rollins, maybe they do something at Backlash. Maybe they do one final thing between the two of them, and then Punk is off to SmackDown or something, because I would really love Punk and John Cena to reconnect. And I don't think that's going to be able to happen if he's on Raw. Doesn't mean John can't come over to Raw. He's already done that a couple of times. So there's no real rules there. But I feel like if Punk is going to have a program with Cena, then that needs to be on SmackDown. Otherwise, you're bringing the WWE title program over to Raw, which will overshadow whatever program Jey Uso is in. So I think anything that Cena does for that championship needs to try to stay, for the most part anyway, on one brand. So if we're going to do a draft, or if we're going to do anything to even out these rosters at all, or to change some things up, then maybe Punk goes over to SmackDown after whatever currently is going on with Rollins comes to an end, and that would also remove him from Paul Heyman. Or you keep Punk on Raw, and these guys just feud for the next year, and it culminates in some big Mania match again. We'll have to see. But it was good to see Punk back. It was good to see Sheamus back. It was good to see Rusev back in the ring tonight. We had a surprisingly good match between Sheamus and Austin Theory. We had a really good match between Roxanne Perez and Io Sky. Pat McAfee and Gunther doing their best to set up their match. We got a championship match in the main event. And we had, one of the craziest Paul Heyman promos of all time. So when you think about all that as a whole, and the fact that the show was only 2.5 hours long, how can you not give tonight's Raw a good grade? I do. I thought tonight's show was good. Good show from the World Wrestling Federation. Excellent stuff. All right. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat here. Since we don't have a huge audience, I'm probably going to bounce out of here early tonight. No, Zach, that's what I was wondering. I don't even think the bell rang. So it was probably a no contest, but since Punk attacked Rollins, right, with the chair, I feel like it would be a DQ victory for Rollins. It doesn't really matter. It's one or the other, I think. But yeah, without the bell ringing, it might just be a no contest. Yeah, Brian, you could be right there too. No, Braun Breaker at Money in the Bank have Sami Zayn win. So when I was talking about Raw guys, who else would be, interesting? Sami Zayn would work. So Breaker, Punk, or Zayn, and especially with Zayn talking about wanting to be champion. Now, he had the opportunity to get a cheap championship title match, remember? He was offered a title match against John Cena if he would have accepted the trade to SmackDown. He said no on principle because he doesn't want a championship match that way. But wouldn't he have it in the same way with the Money in the Bank? The Money in the Bank winner gets to, cash in a very advantageous way for them. It always benefits the briefcase holder. So wouldn't Sami Zayn technically be getting a cheap title shot if he won the briefcase? He might not be about that. They might want to tell the story of Sami Zayn winning the championship at WrestleMania in the normal way, which would be winning the Royal Rumble. And I think if I had to choose between Sami Zayn winning Money in the Bank or winning the Rumble, they both sound good, but I think winning the Rumble might be more special because I'm a big Sami Zayn fan. He can be on his high horse sometimes. I've seen a lot of people say that about Sami Zayn. They're right. They're 100% right. He can be insufferable at times as a babyface. I was like, but overall, I still really enjoy Sami as a performer, and I would love to see him get his moment at WrestleMania one day. And if he won the Royal Rumble and he got the big championship win at WrestleMania, I would love that for him. So if it's by way of Money in the Bank or the Royal Rumble or even the Elimination Chamber, I think ultimately I'm okay with any of those scenarios, but the Rumble might be more fun. And by then, if you get to the let's say that the plan is still to do Breaker and Seth at WrestleMania, That's going to happen way earlier if Breakker is the briefcase holder. But, maybe Breakker wins Elimination Chamber, and then it's a Houston we have a problem situation where Seth is just still kind of bouncing around happily. I think that would be better for the Rumble, though. Well, no, it might be Chamber. Shit, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go next year, but I feel like the whole point of Rollins and Heyman's and Breakker's alliance is to give what is clearly going to be their next big star that little extra boost. Because Breakker, it does have things that Gunther doesn't have. Gunther's great, but Breakker is the guy that I think is just going to be cutting the intense promos, and he's just tremendous. He's just so good. So he's just going to be kind of their next guy, and I think that's a big part of this. And I don't know if that means that Heyman is going to do what he normally does, and he's going to wind up dumping Rollins in favor of Breakker, and Breakker will be the sole Paul Heyman guy. No more Roman, no more Brock. It's just going to be Braun Breakker. And maybe that's where they're waiting to bring Roman back, because Roman, he was involved right after WrestleMania, and now he's kind of disappeared again. So he's going to be back, I'm sure, for the summer. And they've already given you a taste of Braun Breakker versus Roman Reigns. So I feel like that could be a singles match at SummerSlam. No championship on the line at all. Braun Breakker versus Roman Reigns, because I don't think Roman Reigns is going to get a title shot. It's probably going to be Jay and Seth, and then John Cena. Well, shit. John Cena might face Roman at SummerSlam, a rematch from 2021, and this time Cena wins. But yeah, I feel like Roman probably wouldn't be facing Cena for the title at SummerSlam, which means Roman won't be facing anybody for a championship, but he probably also needs to be on the show. So you book Roman Reigns and Braun Breakker. That's probably your SummerSlam match. Breakker and Roman. And then maybe like Cena and Punk, and then Jay and Seth. Something like that. It's a 2-night event, right? We got 2 nights of this shit this year. It's a lot of time, a lot of matches to fill. Zane G. Oh, wait, first of all, thank you, Juliet, hooking up Brian Nino with a channel membership. Thank you so much for that, as always, the Juliet. And Zane is here. Got 5 in the chat for us. Thanks, dude. Have Rollins win the briefcase, tying Punk with winning briefcase twice. Yeah, but the thing is, though, I don't think Rollins needs that. We talked about that before because I said, winning the main event of WrestleMania, to me, gives him that title shot. And based on the outcome of tonight's main event, he's still going to get another title shot. He's got Paul Heyman with him. If Paul Heyman has the power to say, hey, Sammy, if you accept a trade to SmackDown, I can get you a title shot with John Cena, then Rollins is not going to be fighting too hard for title shots. Paul Heyman is going to see to it that he gets them. And since he won the main event of WrestleMania, and he had somebody come out tonight and cost him the championship, I don't believe he needs the briefcase. I believe Rollins gets title shots without needing the briefcase. So tying Punk, with 2 briefcases each is a nice thought, but I feel like he'd just be doing that to do that, where Rollins is probably going to be able to get a championship shot without having to win something. And that we might want that to be the case, because I don't want every single big pay-per-view. I don't want every title match to be won or to be awarded because you won another match. Like, we already have that with the Rumble and the Chamber and 2 Money in the Bank matches. And shit, do we have it with the King of the Ring winners too? I think, right? No, I forgot what the King of the Ring winners did. But anyway, there's too many matches like that already, so I would rather have some feuds be the reason why we're having a match, and then save the briefcase for getting somebody else over, and I think, like I said, Breakker would make a really interesting story. Seth Rollins is the champion, celebrating with Paul Heyman by his side, and Heyman is standing there in between a world champion and a briefcase holder. We already saw how stressed out Paul Heyman was tonight, or how intense he was anyway, and we've seen how stressed out he can be in the past with the bloodline and everything they did to him. And he sometimes looks like a very, very unhealthy man when he's having a stressful time in his life. And I think if he has to sit there and worry about Rollins, his crown jewel, being threatened by this rabid, intense animal that just happens to be my friend, and he's got a guaranteed anytime, anyplace championship match in his hand, I'd be freaking out too. So I think that could make for fun segments on TV. Rollins may be taking the loyalty of Braun Breaker for granted. That always happens too, right? Rollins will probably be unthreatened by the briefcase because he's so delusional. He thinks Breaker is just going to be loyal to him no matter what. And he'd probably even say so on the mic. That's Braun Breaker. He knows not to step to me, or he knows where his bread is buttered. He would never do that to me. Breaker is holding that briefcase and biding his time until he can take down Cena, and Breaker then is just kind of like making little faces. We've seen this over and over and over. So it'll probably maybe be something like that. But I think if Breaker wound up winning the briefcase, that could make for some fun television throughout 2025. We got to figure out what they're going to be doing for the rest of the year, and the whole Heyman, Breaker, Rollins dynamic there with a championship and a briefcase with, CM Punk floating around and Jey Uso as champion. You got Gunther you still got to worry about. Raw could have a lot going on. And if they did a draft, like who would you send? Who would you send to SmackDown? Who would you bring to Raw? Would you send Gunther too? Do you think Gunther's done all he can really do on Raw? Would you put him back on SmackDown? Would you send CM Punk over there so he can start, working with John Cena? Or would you do like what they used to do in the old days and switch the champions? I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. If they brought Cena to Raw and moved Jey Uso to SmackDown and they switched the championships. But then now you got, oh man, those belts are going to be all jumbled though. I'm hoping they don't do that because I like having the 2 WWE logo belts on one show and the 2 world title belts on the other. But if they ever wanted to swap champions, if they did them both, if they swapped them both, Io Sky and Jey Uso to SmackDown, John Cena and who the hell has the title over there? Tiffany Stratton moves to Raw. I'd be fine with that. I used to like it when they used to do that back in the day. Last night we watched Backlash 2005. And right after that is when they did the draft, when John Cena came to Raw and Batista went to SmackDown. Yeah, no Liv Morgan on the show tonight, Brian. I think last week was when she kind of asked for that time off and it was granted. So we might not see her until she's done wrapping up filming in that movie, which it was announced. I don't have the info on it now, but it is a pretty well-known director, I guess. I don't remember any details on it now. Let me see if I can look it up and read it to you guys real quick. Because I think last week we didn't know what it was going to be yet. Okay, Bad Lieutenant. She will star in the movie Bad Lieutenant Tokyo, directed by Takahashi Miike, with Shun Oguri and Lily James also in the cast. And it's an international co-promotion. Neo International handling foreign sales. Morgan will play a politician's daughter who goes missing. So it seems like a major role for her. And some people know this director and are very familiar with him. I am not. So good for her. I think that's awesome. That is awesome. Right on, guys. Okay. Well, I think that's going to be a wrap for tonight. Not too long of an episode this evening, but I wanted to come up here and review Raw since we are now in the home stretch to Backlash. So I will drop predictions on you this week, probably Thursday, so keep a lookout for that. And then the link is already up on the channel right now for Saturday. We'll be here Saturday to watch Backlash together, and then we'll stick around and do a review as always. And then this Sunday is Mother's Day, and I'm still figuring out a watch-along plan for that. So just keep a lookout on the channel for all that stuff coming up. Like and subscribe on your way out the door. Zane G, you're not late. $5. I may be late. Universal Championship retired. Yeah. It was. Well, I think it was officially finally retired on the website, right? Right? So they ended the reign, I think, when Roman beat Brock at 22. I think that's when it eventually, or I keep saying 22, like the year 22, at WrestleMania 38, when Roman beat Brock there and they unified it. I guess that's the date that they end the Universal Championship's lineage. And that's fine with me because I really, really hated that championship. I hated it. Really, really didn't like it. And I'm glad we have the one that Jay has. So yeah, that's officially retired. All right, guys, have a great rest of your night. And I will be catching y'all in just a couple of days. Take care. Peace.